I'm pretty certain the first time you heard of a train, it was a long, serpent-like locomotive hulk of metal and steam. If that's you, I can't say I blame you. It's me as well. The steam engine, being the first train, has endured in our minds long enough. It's slow, loud and long, and I can bet a pretty good sum of money that if you haven't seen it up close, you've seen it in a movie. However, things have gotten so good for trains, and we have the growth of technology to thank for that. Now, we may have trains so large that they may have been classified along with dinosaurs if they hadn't gone extinct. But they're not just large, they're also mighty impressive. Today, we'll take you through a rundown of 10 of the world's largest and impressive trains. Hit the like button if you haven't done so, subscribe, and also hit the notifications button. You wouldn't want to miss out on what we have next. Number 10. The Canadian National Railway. When you want to think about the trains that ply the Canadian National Railway, think of steam engines, but think of something thrice as long, and with a more modern architecture. These trains can be as long as 65 feet 8 inches. Yes, it's really that long. They also use a diesel-electric engine. That's why it's the horning that first heralds a train rather than the steam. The width and height are an astonishing 10 feet and 15 feet 5 1/4 inches respectively. The fuel capacity alone is 12,000 litres. If that doesn't tell you nothing about how large these trains are, you should go to the Canadian National Railway and see for yourself. Number 9. Mauritania Train. This train is known to be one of the world's longest and heaviest trains, and for good reason. Like the Canadian, it's diesel-electric, but that's as far as the similarities go. This train is over 2 kilometers long. In the language of feet and inches, that's a whopping 6,561 feet and 8.2 inches. It dwarfs that of the Canadian National Railway, doesn't it? Also, it has 190 wagons attached to it and can't be pulled by one locomotive. It's got to be 2 or more for this beast. Sometimes, these wagons can carry as much as 17,000 tons of iron ore. It's strong and sturdy enough to resist desert conditions. It may not be as fast as your bullet train, but it's impressive in its magnificent way. Number 8. The Tehachapi Loop. The Tehachapi Loop is a spiral that's 3,779 feet long. It may not be as long as the Mauritania Train, but it takes trains that are super long and impressive. This spiral runs on the Mohave subdivision of the Union Pacific Railroad and goes through the Tehachapi Pass. It was built along a steady incline so that long and heavy trains would gather enough momentum to make it up the mountains. The track rises steadily by 2%, elevating by 77 feet until it makes a circle that's 1,210 foot in diameter. Trains that are about 3,800 feet in length would pass over themselves as they go around the spiral. Cool, right? This loop takes very long freight trains. Looking at it from an elevated angle, you might just think you're watching the world's longest millipede crawling along. An average of 36 really long freight trains run through the Tehachapi Loop every day. If you're a fan, there's every certainty that you can come across such a sight. Number 7. The Garn Train, Australia. We've been talking about freight trains all the while because they're the kind of trains that are easily large and impressive. However, the Garn Train steps out as one of a kind. It's an Australian tourist passenger train that's as long as 2,539 feet and is sturdy enough to travel 2,979 kilometers at a stretch. That's 50 hours and 15 minutes if we're counting by the clock. By all standards, that's mind-blowing. Many even consider it to be one of the greatest passenger trains in the world. It has a retinue of 16 to 38 carriages that's usually pulled by a locomotive or two if there's need for an extra one. These carriages include guest carriages, crew quarters, Platinum Club, Queen Adelaide restaurants, Outback Explorer lounges, and 3 power vans. It weighs 1,400 tons, which may not be much considering the weight of the other trains on the list. It usually goes on 85 km per hour, but it's also got a maximum speed of 115 km per hour and consumes an average of 40,000 litres of diesel. The carriages have seating arrangements, all-in roomette and twinette compartments, sleeping arrangements, and auto-rack arrangements. Indeed, the Garn Train is the Titanic of all trains. Number 6. Pacific National. If you want to see just how many large trains you can be impressed with in a day, You should see the trains owned by the Pacific National. It carries large freight trains such as the 7902V BL33, 3GK6 8113, and 3XM4 NR45 among others. Most of them carry logs, grains, etc., and are so long you can't cover the length in a stone's throw, no matter how hard you try. The Pacific National has as much as 596 locomotives and a cumulative of 12,875 wagons. Isn't that impressive? There are different classes of trains in the Pacific National, most of them having diesel-electric engines, except for the Class RT, which is a diesel-mechanical Class PB hybrid, and 71, which is fully electric. These trains have on average maximum speeds of 115 km per hour. Number 5. BHP Iron Ore Train. The BHP Iron Ore Train is the longest in the world. It has set this record in 2011, and no one's beaten it yet. You'll find that beating a 7.29 kilometer train is much harder than you think. It has 682 carriages that are pulled by 8 locomotive engines and weighs 219.8 million pounds. Astonishing, right? As of 2011, the BHP Iron Ore Train demonstrated that it could carry 181 million pounds of iron ore. I can only imagine how long you'd wait to see the end of this train. But that's just one train in the collection. BHP Iron Ore Trains are the heaviest trains in the world. Some of these freight trains can carry up to 43,000 tons of steel and ore. So even though they don't measure up to the 7.29 kilometer train of 2011, they're still beasts in their own right. It's like the dinosaur age all over again. As heavy as they are, these trains chug cargo from Port Hedland to Newman, a distance of approximately 450 kilometers. The track from Port Hedland to Newman is a mixture of plain and hilly terrains. BHP Iron Ore Trains are strong enough to go up these hilly terrains on the path to their final destination. Number 4. Rio Tinto Trains. The Rio Tinto Train may not be as long as the BHP Iron Ore Train, but I'd say it's worth its weight in gold. Carrying a total tally of up to 240 wagons and a length of 2.4 kilometers, the Rio Tinto Train is one of the longest out there. You won't find that many trains capable of carrying up to 28,000 tons of iron ore in one trip, which is approximately 800 kilometers. In other words, Rio Tinto trains are strong enough to carry 28,000 tons of iron ore for 40 hours. These trains are often found along the Hamersley and Robe River Railway. The majority of this railway is owned by Rio Tinto, hence why the presence of their trains on the railway isn't a surprise. These tracks run for about 1,300 kilometers, and they're the largest heavy freight rail network owned by private individuals. Rio Tinto trains include the GE Transportation-944CWs, GE Transportation ES44DC, and GE Transportation ES44DCIs amongst others. Rio Tinto trains as of now are fully automated trains. You know what that means, right? These trains don't need a driver to go across the rail. This makes Rio Tinto's rail network the world's first automated heavy-haul freight railway. Number 3. The Trains May Impressionante Brazil. This Brazilian train has earned its right to be among this list. Able to carry an average of up to 100 carriages, this train does leave an impression. It might not be as long as any of the others mentioned here, but standing and watching this train pass will require some measure of patience. If you don't have any, this train will probably wear you out. It can also carry as much as 2 huge containers on each carriage. None of the trains mentioned on the list are able to do that. This should tell you how heavily equipped these trains are for carrying weight. That's why they're a staple choice when it comes to ferrying loads across great distances. Some of its trains can run on an average of 80 km per hour, while others can go faster. Number 2. Union Pacific Train. The Union Pacific trains are so long that they can carry a minimum average of 30 cars to a maximum average of 130 cars. Pretty cool, right? Wait till you hear something cooler. There are 8,300 trains that operate under the Union Pacific. Union Pacific trains include LTA 41s, LTA 42s, SD 60, GP 60, SD 40N, and so on. These trains could crawl so agonizingly slow or run depending on how much weight the train's actually carrying. Still, knowing that something this long can actually exist is the reason why these trains are impressive. Union Pacific trains are also known to be one of the strongest trains in the world. If ever you have the opportunity to go through all their trains, you'd see this for yourself. They've got Challenger trains, Northern type trains, and big boy steam locomotives. The first diesel streamliner is a Union Pacific train. The 6936, the largest operational diesel locomotive, is also a Union Pacific train. The Union Pacific train runs across the Union Pacific Railroad, and these rails span over 51,800 kilometers through 23 states of the US. If you ever come across trains that bear UP, UPP, or UPY, you're definitely looking at a Union Pacific train. You can also know Union Pacific trains by their yellow painting. Number 1. Lee Creek Coal Train. The Lee Creek Coal Train gets its name from the Lee Creek mine for coal. The trains carry coal from this mine along a 280-kilometer rail line to where it needs to be. And you won't believe the kind of freight trains you'd find here. If you're looking for a train that's 2,950 kilometers in length, has 3 locomotives, 168 coal wagons, and 1 compressor wagon, you're definitely looking at the Lee Creek Coal Train. Each wagon can carry a maximum of 71 tons. In total, this train can carry coals weighing 11,928 tons. That's pretty sturdy, isn't it? With all this load, it could still run as fast as 70 kilometers an hour. I could tell you without a doubt that this isn't the kind of train cowboys could just hop on back in the day. But that's just one of the coal trains that tread the Lee Creek Railway line. All of them utilize both diesel and electric engines. A train that can carry tons of coal would probably require a lot of power, and the Lee Creek coal trains are more than equipped. With 2,460 kilowatts, it's no surprise that they can pull as much as 11,928 tons. It can also go as fast as 153 kilometers per hour. This train is definitely not one to lose in a race. Are there trains that should be here that we didn't mention? Do let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to stay tuned for our next video. Whether you're a fan or not, you wouldn't want to miss out on our informative content.